Okay, I think we can get started. If
Let's
you're
do
good
it.
to go, let's go. Okay, so hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Anna. I work in partnerships at Favikon, and I also run the Favikon Partner Program of over 180 B2B influencers. So part of my job is making collaborations like today come to life, and this one has been a long time coming. So I'm super excited that we're finally getting to make this happen. At Favicon, we work with creators every single day, and one of the main questions I hear, especially from our partners, is how do I actually land those brand deals? Not just the kind of one-off opportunities, but long-term partnerships with brands that actually move the needle and make it count. So we went and found quite possibly the best person to answer that question. Today's guest is a full-time creator, sponsorship expert and coach, and the author of Sponsor Magnet. I have my copy here. As you can see, Justin has his in the back. This book has changed the game for thousands of creators. He's personally negotiated over $5 million in brand partnerships, and he's built an entire career around helping creators go from chasing deals to attracting them. So please give a warm welcome to Justin. Justin Moore, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's get this party started. And you know what? We're here to make some people some money, right? So I'm excited for this. I'm very excited.
Yes, me too. This has been a long time coming. Elena, our head of partnerships, helped set this collab up way back in maybe September. So I'm super stoked that we're finally getting to make this come to life. Here's the plan. Next 45 minutes, Justin and I are going to get into how to attract deals, price your work, build those long-term partnerships, and actually understand what brands are looking for right now from creators. And then we'll leave the last 15 minutes up to questions from you guys, so feel free to leave comments in the live chat. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on other live webinars like this one. And we also have an amazing series of videos on everything influencer marketing and creator economy. So feel free to click that bell so you don't miss another video. All right, let's get started into things. So firstly, Justin, I think it'd be really great for our audience to understand a little bit more about you, and for me as well. So I'd love to know a little bit about like how you started out as a creator, first of all. When did you realize that like being a creator and doing partnerships with brands could actually be like a real career? And was there maybe like a specific moment where that all clicked for you?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. So I want to first start by saying I was not a creator back in the day. Like I am an engineer by my background. I was in medical devices in the early part of my career. And it was actually my wife, April, she was my girlfriend at the time. She started a YouTube channel back in 2009. So this was way back in the day, before, being an influencer was really a thing. There really was the YouTube AdSense or the partner program was just starting at that time, and it was application only, right? So when she first started on YouTube, making money, it's very commonly known today that like if you get monetized on YouTube, like you can make a cut of the advertising revenue that advertisers run on your channel. But that was not a guarantee back in the early days of at least social media that we were on. And so it very much was a hobby for her in the beginning. But pretty early on, brands started emailing her not about not offering to pay her, but offering to send her free stuff. And so that was very exciting to us because, we were in our early 20s, we had no money. And so my wife's channel was all around beauty products and skincare and cosmetics and things like that. And so, free stuff, free, hair curler, free cosmetics, that was amazing, right? And that was how it was for years. And it wasn't like we got smart after a month or two of the brands offering free stuff. It was, that was just the expectation. Oh yeah, you send us some, her for something for free, she'd talk about it in a post. And it wasn't until I went back to school actually to get my MBA at night after work, and I started taking these classes all around, marketing and advertising and negotiation and things like that, where I kind of came back to her one night and I was like, honey, I kind of feel like you're getting the short end of the stick here. Like the brands are offering you, yeah, $30 hair curler, great, but like you have hundreds of people in your comment section saying, oh, April, thank you so much for telling me about that product. I've never heard of it. Or, oh, I just went to the store and got it. Thank you so much. Like that is true influence, right? And so I said, I really feel like we should start asking if these brands have a budget to compensate you for talking about them. And she was like, there's no way any brand is ever going to like pay me money for this. I was like, just try it. And so the next brand, sure enough, you asked for like a specific moment in time. I remember, I'll never forget this. A brand called Imamoko. It was like a Korean skincare online retailer. They emailed and said, hey, can you talk about us? And she said, like, what's your budget? Sure, I'd love to collaborate. And they said, oh yeah, sure. If you can talk about us in 2 videos a month, we will pay you $700 monthly. Right. And we were like, this was like in 2010 or 2011. And so our minds were absolutely blown. And the very first thing we thought was, how can we find 10 more brands just like this? And so, fast forward 15 years, basically, as you mentioned, we've made millions of dollars working with brands. And so this really became our primary revenue stream as creators, and kind of unlock this idea that, if you have built up a distribution channel, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on, LinkedIn, wherever it is, you really rightfully should be charging brands to access that distribution.
For sure. That's super interesting, actually, that you came from that kind of engineering background. A lot of people joining us today are from that kind of more B2B niche. We have health tech, we have engineers, SaaS. Mm-hmm. So that will be really interesting as well for them to have that perspective, and also to understand that you really can kind of start small and you can have a small audience and you can still monetize. So that's super interesting, and also really nice that you and your wife have kind of built this together. So that's super lovely. From the other side of things, I think your perspective is super unique in the sense that you've also worked in the kind of influencer marketing side and the agency side. And I wanted to know how that kind of dual experience, has helped shape the advice that you give creators.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't have written this book. I would not be a sponsorship coach had it not been for my experience running the agency, because it's one thing to be a creator and brands email you and say, hey, we'd love to collaborate with you. And then you're kind of negotiating your own deals. But it really wasn't until I started the agency. And to clarify, I was more like an ad agency, so I did not have a roster of clients. I was basically brands and agency, larger, let's say media agencies would hire my company to execute influencer marketing campaigns. And then we would reach out to the influencers and say, hey, our client, brand XYZ, is interested in collaborating with you. And so that's an important distinction, because basically I would be in these boardrooms with these large advertisers, and they would say, hey, Justin, we don't want to just spend, $5K, $10K on a partnership with you and your wife. We want to spend $1 million. We want to spend, across 200, creators, 500 creators. Like, what you tell us, what should the strategy be? What platform should we be activating on? What types of creators should we be collaborating with? And so it's just a very different conversation. And so, I've paid out millions of dollars to other creators at this point. I ran that agency for 7 years. And really, I think the dual perspective that you mentioned is that the pervasive, I think, attitude on social media oftentimes is that brands are out there to screw the little guy or gal. They're trying to take advantage of people. They're trying to pay you. They're trying to lowball you. They're trying to just, every kind of malicious interpretation that you can have around collaborations. This was kind of the attitude that I saw on TikTok, on X. Like, everyone was just kind of talking trash about brands. And here I am, I've done literally thousands of deals between my wife and the agency at this point, and I can literally count on one hand the amount of times that I could say really a brand was really trying to be malicious and didn't have good intentions. But most of the time, like the vast majority, brands were amazing to work with. And so I really felt as though I needed to inject this perspective into the industry, is that brand deals, partnerships, sponsorships can be amazing, but you also, as a creator, have to be professional. You have to be polite. You have to be kind, right? And you have to have this perspective of empathy. And great things can happen when you approach a relationship from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's honestly such a unique perspective. So it's really interesting for us and our audience today to understand and learn from you with that kind of really precious perspective, I would say. Without further ado, I really want to get into the kind of first pillar of Sponsor Magnet, which is obviously attracting those brand deals rather than chasing. So obviously the name of the book is Sponsor Magnet. So the question I guess most viewers today want to understand is, how do I become a Sponsor Magnet myself? for maybe, a creator who's just starting out, but they're maybe still not getting inbound from brands? What's the kind of shift that they need to make to attract those brand deals? And is it better to kind of reach out proactively, or is it more a case of making the right kind of content that's going to attract the brand?
Yeah. So the best way in which I can describe this, so there's a lot of different, we could go a lot of different directions with your question. But I want to answer this by telling you a quick story. So early on when I started coaching creators, I had a kind of like a family focused creator approach me. This was a B2C type creator, but she came to me and she said, why am I not getting any partnerships with any food brands? Because in the family space, food is like a major category of like a lot of food brands want to partner with, let's say, mom influencers, lifestyle influencers, this type of thing. And I went and I look at her platforms and she did not have a single post featuring food. And so you have to think about it from the brand's perspective. If I am out there trying to recruit or find a creator to partner with, I am kind of like kicking the tires on a bunch of different people. I'm going to cast a wide net. I'm going to go and I'm going to look at their platforms and I'm going to say, does it seem like this person's audience is influenced by them? Were they to talk about our product? If I hire them to talk about our product, are this person's followers going to come to them for easy weeknight meal ideas or something, right? If I'm a food brand. So if you do not have any content on your platform right now that it's very obvious to your dream brand, like, oh, I'd love to work with that brand one day. If they land on your platforms, is it obvious to them that like you serve as a conduit to access a pool of prospective customers of theirs? Because again, you have to think about it from their perspective. What are their other options to get in front of their prospective customers if they didn't hire you? Well, oftentimes it's running ads, right? They're running ads on Meta. They're running ads on, pay-per-click ads. They're advertising at trade shows, in-person events. They're maybe industry magazines, right? Like, especially if you are listening to this and you're a B2B creator, you're a B2B professional. Those are the types of arenas, the types of things that those advertisers are doing. Another story I can share is I have a B2B creator in my mastermind her name is Dr. Alex, and she has a podcast called Digital Pathology Place. So she's a doctor, she's a veterinarian, right? And she has one of the most influential podcasts in this tiny little niche of digital pathology. And if you think about that, the brands and the companies that are advertising with her, their medical equipment are sometimes north of $250,000, right? And so she doesn't need thousands, tens of thousands of people listening to her episodes. It's 200, it's 300, it's the decision makers, right? And so your job, if you're trying to attract these sponsors, is to help them understand that it's not just about the size of your audience, it's about who's in your audience. So if you can help them understand, you have some data, you've surveyed them, you understand their purchasing patterns, you understand, the types of, jobs that they have, what type of role they have. Are they directors? Are they executives? Are they, this type of thing? And so this is that you kind of have to reverse engineer. If I am a marketer at this large enterprise software company or whatever, how can I make it easy for them to take my channel or my platform to their boss and say, hey, we should hire Justin because it's going to help us get us further to our goals?
Yeah, that's super interesting. You talk about kind of the both B2C side and the B2B side, and I think that'll be really kind of important and interesting to a lot of our viewers who are in those kind of niche health sectors and etc. So that'll be really interesting for them as well to understand. And as you say about the kind of content side of things, making sure that brands can see right away what your niche is and what you can do for their brand. And at Favikon, we developed the kind of content search so that brands can type in, creator streamer eating noodles that they want to use to sell their noodle product, not going for that maybe necessarily the same old kind of creator, but nowadays brands are going for people that they know can sell their product. And I think being really kind of honed in on your niche is, and especially if that shows in your content, is honestly the best way to go. So yeah.
Well,
amazing.
actually, let's talk about your technology that you just mentioned about you allow the ability of brands to really get granular in terms of who they're trying to target, who they're trying to reach. This is an important insight, which is that increasingly with tools like Favikon, brands are able to find like the exact type of creator that would be a perfect fit for their brand. And so Brands are much more often partnering with someone who has a very deep and narrow subject matter expertise versus the generic lifestyle influencer, the generic career influencer. It's like someone who focuses on like career advice for healthcare or something like that. Like that is a much better partner than someone who speaks to a much wider audience. And so if you're someone listening to this thinking, well, I don't really know what my niche is. I don't really feel like I own like a very narrow portion of it. Start thinking about what is your unique superpower? What is your unique perspective on maybe a more narrow part of what you talk about? Because it's kind of counterintuitive because you think, well, yeah, but that will mean that I can speak to less people. Yeah, but that will also mean that your opportunities will increase because now you're a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, you've hit the nail on the head right there. I think that was really, really great, especially very reassuring and, really interesting for those people that are maybe struggling to find their niche, and also reassuring for those people that are super in that, that niche that you were talking about, being the more specific, kind of the better. That kind of leads me to my next question. I wanted to talk a bit about, if you're going from the attracting brands and you want to take the more proactive approach, how do you go about that? What's the difference when, you're doing the cold outreach? Let's kind of get specific on that. I mean, imagine you've never done a brand deal before. You don't even know where to start. Okay. How do you find the right person to email, and who do you reach out to? And how do you pitch yourself so that you don't just get ignored? Even if the response is negative, how do you really get that response from a brand?
All right, so let me talk about what not to do, because we made this mistake constantly early on, which was, okay, let me reach out to this brand and say, hi, my name is Justin. I've got this many followers on LinkedIn. I talk about this. Here's my audience demographic. Here's the type of, things that they're interested in. I think I've been using your brand or your tool for 3 years, and I would love to collaborate. Do you have some time to hop on a call and we could kind of chat through ways in which we could collaborate? Right. Okay. So first of all, drop it in the chat if you have ever sent a message or a pitch like that to a brand and you either heard crickets or they said thanks, but no thanks. I really want to know. I want to see in the chat here to see if anyone has done that, because how do I know that? Because that's what we did. We sent that message constantly. And again, I do this a lot. You have to think about it from the perspective of the marketer. They don't know who you are. They probably don't care how many followers you have, because guess what? Lots of people have lots of followers on the internet. That's a hard truth here. Following is not really that impressive anymore. And they don't have time to hop on random phone calls with people that they don't know because they're busy. They're juggling lots of things, right? They don't have time to do this. And so something that I teach in my book Sponsor Magnet is called the ROPE method. So it stands for, it's an acronym, the ROPE pitching method. So R stands for your pitch has to be relevant to a campaign that the brand is either currently running or has run in the past. O stands for organic. So you can tie your pitch back to organic work that you've already posted, like let's say a LinkedIn post that you already published 2 months ago that got great traction, that shows that your audience has existing affinity for their brand or their product. Not that you have affinity. They don't care about that. Remember, your hard job is to show them that you serve as a conduit for them to access a pool of prospective customers. So you have to show that your audience has existing affinity for their tool, okay? P stands for proof, so you can show how you've helped others achieve results. And E stands for easy to execute. When the brand responds and say, okay, yeah, this is interesting, but what did you have in mind? So you're actually pitching them something very specific. And so let's say why don't we make this, I'm kind of going off script here, Anna. I would love for someone in the chat to drop one of their dream brands. They would say, oh, I would love to work with brand XYZ. And I'm going to give you the quick and dirty explanation of how I would pitch this brand. Is this okay, Anna? Because I feel like this would be kind of cool if we got like an actual real brand example from someone, and then we could kind of reverse engineer it. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love audience participation. Let's go. We have we have Cade, our very own creator, who is obsessed with Heinz ketchup. I can't confirm. He's sat next to me right now. He had ketchup content on his Instagram as a creator himself in B2C, and Heinz commented on his post. So what would be your advice if he was reaching out to Heinz, for example?
Okay, all right. So you know what I'm going to do? is I am going to pull up Heinz website. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here. You okay with that?
Amazing. Go for it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna do the entire screen here. Boom. Okay, so I think you need to pull my screen up into the main foreground there. Okay, there we go. All right, so here we go. So I pulled up the Heinz website, right? This is the Heinz website. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to see, okay, what does it seem like they care about right now? So they've got a store locator, they've got all sorts of different. Okay, so they've got trending now. They've got this simply tomato ketchup, so that's apparently trending right now. That's interesting. They've got this introducing the keg chup. Be the first to know when the Heinz keg chup drops. Okay, so I'm going to open this. What the heck is this? So, okay, this is for when one bottle is just not enough. Okay, so here's your pitch, dude. They've got this trend, like this is viral. This could go viral, right? This is something that you could see lots of people wanting to talk about on social media. And so let's go back to the rope method, right? Relevancy, right? The R in the rope method is the subject line of your email. It was Cade, right? His name was Cade. The subject line is keg chip viral moment, question mark. That's the subject line of that email. It's not, I would love to work with collaboration with, 20,000 LinkedIn influencer. No, they don't care about that. They care about the keg chip, right? Because that's what they're promoting right now. And so the first line of this email is, I saw that you're introducing this keg chip. I think that's such a brilliant idea. So that's the R, the very first line. You don't introduce yourself. You talk about the keg chip. That's what they care about, right? Line number 2, sentence number 2 is, Kate is already posting about this. So I'm constantly posting about how much I love Heinz ketchup. And then you link a post where you talk about it and it's relevant. Here's what I've learned about B2B sales from eating, a bunch of, Heinz ketchup for my whole life, whatever, right? That's the O, the organic piece, right? And then you break out into exactly what you're going to pitch. You say, I would love to do 4 LinkedIn posts. I can turn around the first 2 posts within, 2 weeks. I can give you usage rights to repurpose those for paid advertising. Happy to share some results of how I've worked with, Best Foods or Hellman's mayonnaise, or maybe not that, but right? Like happy to share how I've worked with this other brand. Are you free on Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk about this? Yeah. That's the pitch.
That's the pitch.
So do you see, drop it in the chat, Kate, is that helpful? Because again, this is, I hope that it's clear that we have to be very, very specific when we're pitching these advertisers, because they don't care about you. That's the cold truth about it. They care about themselves. And you know what the brilliant part about this, Anna, is that this is what they have budget set aside for. You can attest to this, right? Like if an advertiser wants to work with your company and hire you guys to run campaigns, they're probably coming to you with a brief. They're saying, hey, we've got this keg chip thing that we're launching. We want to find 10 creators to spread the word about this. They're not just being like, oh, we'd love to find some random people to collaborate with us to talk about Heinz. No, it's about some very, very specific moment that they want to spotlight.
That was amazing. Just the way you did that on the spot, I am so impressed. And Kate was taking notes. He was typing. But I guess for everyone else in the chat, that was Kate approved. But honestly, it's when Favikon, he really is obsessed with ketchup. But it goes for anyone else in the comments. We had OpenAI, NGA, Function Health, Breville. So same goes for any of, obviously, you have to, really use that same method, be really, be really direct. The more direct you can be and precise you can be, the better. And I think that kind of, feeds back into what we were saying about really owning your niche as well. So I think this is the theme.
Well, the other thing I just want to quickly mention is that how long did that take us to find that, Anna? It took us
2 minutes.
A minute. Yeah, 2 minutes. And so I think a lot of people, when they're thinking like, I don't even know what I would say, like I don't have time to do all this research. I'm so busy. I got to write my next LinkedIn post. It's like, no, it takes 2 minutes. Like a lot of people, they have this tendency to write this like boilerplate copy and paste template that they send to 100 different brands, and they're, oh, no one's responding to me. Pitching doesn't work. It's like, no, it's because you're mailing it in, and it just takes a little bit of effort to do the research and really stand out.
Yeah. For sure. Honestly, great advice. And it was so simple to do and so easy. So hopefully our audience will start applying that when they start reaching out to brands, and maybe we'll see something shifting. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I want to move on to the question of money. Obviously, everyone wants to get that bag. That is the ultimate goal. But it's especially sometimes tricky in B2B, where your audience can be quite small, but also incredibly valuable. And you mentioned as well that followers is no longer really what brands are looking for. In terms of creators, they're more interested in, what are they actually going to drive forward for the product. Follower count is we're seeing that generally in the industry is becoming a less important metric. So my question is, what should a creator in general think about what to charge? And I guess you have B2B and B2C experience. Does that price maybe fluctuate or differ depending on whether you're B2B or B2C?
Okay, again, I'm going to answer your question by starting to talk about what not to do, because what a lot of people do is a brand will come into their inbox asking about a collaboration. They say, how much do you charge for one LinkedIn post? They just ask for a very specific scope of work. And what a lot of people do is they just spit back one number. They go, 1,500, right? They just make up a number on the spot. Or actually the worst thing is they go text their friend. They say, hey, how much did you charge for your last LinkedIn post? Or how much did you worked with that brand? How much did you charge? And so this is something, so I want to real quickly talk about the 4 different pricing styles that a lot of creators tend to use. So the first is, as I mentioned, competitive, right? So you will chat with a friend and you will basically base your pricing exclusively on what your friend charged. And how do you know that your friend is charging properly? How do you know that your friend didn't text someone else who also had no idea what they were doing? And so it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. And so that's the quickest way. It's a race to the bottom when it comes to understanding what you're worth. And so we're not going to do that anymore. Okay, I hope everyone in the chat, type a 1 in the chat if you're not going to do competitive pricing anymore. Okay, and then so now you get a little smarter. You say, okay, I'm not going to charge based on what my friends are charging, but you know what, I collaborated with a brand one time and it took way longer than I expected. I was making some video content for them and I had to edit it and I had to hire an editor and all that. And you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I want to make sure that I'm at least making $100 an hour or something, right? And so I'm gonna calculate my costs, and then I'm gonna add some sort of arbitrary premium on that. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna add 25%. And so, what you quickly realize is at the end of this engagement, you got the deal, but you're not gonna get rich. You're just kind of keeping the light on, the lights on. You're paying your bills, but you're not actually, extracting the value that this brand is receiving when they collaborate with you. So you get a little smarter. You think, okay, actually what's happening is, I'm approaching, let's say in your industry, maybe there is some sort of seasonal thing that's important, right? So around the holidays, brands in your industry sell, they do a lot of marketing campaigns around the holidays. So you think, okay, I'm going to jack up my rates, twice as much during the holidays when everyone wants to work with me. And this is what's called dynamic pricing. But the challenge there is that now brands and agencies cannot expect predictability from you. So if you, let's say, have hired a creator, a B2B LinkedIn influencer, let's say for a spring campaign, it went great. And then you come back to them 4 months later and you say, hey, we'd love to work with you again. Oh, sorry, my rates are double or triple. And their following hasn't even really grown that meaningfully. And so now you're not going to refer as much business to them because their rates just seem unpredictable. And so the 4th pricing bucket that I want to discuss is what I call merit-based pricing, which is, as you mentioned, that the most important thing that you need to understand is how much value is the brand receiving by collaborating with you. So I mentioned that example of Dr. Alex, my coaching client. She is super influential within her tiny little, niche. And she's not getting tens of thousands of views or downloads on her podcast or her YouTube videos or her LinkedIn posts. She's getting hundreds. But she has shared that she has literally sold multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of medical equipment on these live streams that she does on LinkedIn, because who was it in the audience? It was the hospital, the person in the C-suite at this hospital system that ultimately purchased that X-ray or whatever it was because of her live stream. And so to your point, the most important thing that you need to understand is, what would it be worth to the advertisers in your industry to be exposed to your audience. And so, so there's two. So first of all, I have an entire chapter in my book Sponsor Magnet talking about the pricing stuff. So we could probably do a whole episode just on pricing, but I do want to talk about two brief things very quickly. The first is something that I call the DUE rule, DUE. So you have to understand, what are the deliverables? What is the brand actually asking you to do, right? So a LinkedIn post, a YouTube video, podcast, a newsletter blast, whatever. U is usage rights. What do they want to do beyond you distributing it organically on your platform? So they want to take that content and be able to run paid advertising with it, because that should be something that costs more. E is exclusivity. Are they saying that you cannot partner with brands in a similar category or competitive category for a certain duration? So those are the three buckets that you need to consider when it comes to your pricing. And then the other bucket that you need to think about is something that I call the ARC framework. And again, I go over this in the book. It's what is the brand trying to accomplish with this campaign? Is it awareness? Is it repurposing, or is it pure conversions like sales? And so again, if you'd like, we can go into those things further, but it's much more complex than just picking a number out of thin air.
For sure. No, I know it's a huge topic to cover, and it's obviously, complex depending on the kind of thing you're going for, depending on your audience. So I think that gives a really good overview for everyone. And if they want to learn more, obviously they can get a copy of Sponsor Magnet. Feel free to reach out to us at Favikon as well, because we still have copies we'd love to give out to people. So I think that we'll leave it for pricing there today, but hopefully that gives people a kind of idea of where to start and how to start thinking about knowing their own worth and how to price and pitch themselves to brands. So amazing. I just wanted to had a really good question from one of our partners, kind of more about that negotiation stage of things. From our partner Hussam, an amazing question. He said, a brand has approached me with a request that doesn't quite align with my goals. How do I redirect them towards something that works for both of us without losing the opportunity altogether?
That's a great question. So first of all, I want to applaud you for having an ethical set of standards that you say, okay, I don't think that this is going to be a good fit for at least my audience, but I want to ensure that I could potentially serve this brand in a different way. And so the first place that my mind goes to, Sam, is potentially, what if you could create some content that the brand could utilize on its own platforms, not on your platforms? So they're probably coming to you because you represent a figure in the industry of someone who is trusted, right? And so perhaps there is some interesting piece of content that you could create that would live on the brand's website, or they could send it out in their newsletter, or they could put it out on their podcast. And so that could still be something very valuable to them. But at the same time, you would not have to, quote unquote, expose that sponsorship or that partnership to your organic audience. And so again, going back to what I was mentioning earlier about the ARC framework, that what I just described is what I would call the goal would be repurposing. So again, they're trying to get more mileage out of this asset than it would than you just posting on your platforms. And so I would encourage you to have a conversation with them to say, like, what really at the end of the day is your goal here? If it's just content, then maybe I can help you with that. It's maybe not going to be a great fit for me to actually amplify or syndicate that live on my platforms, but I would still love to be able to serve you in this way. So that's really, I think, how I would try to pivot that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's super. I think that's really great advice. So thank you so much. Moving on to kind of from, you're starting out, you've got your first brand deal. And I wanted to understand, and I think a lot of our viewers want to understand, how do you move from those one-off kind of, brands with a deals with a brand, and then you kind of maybe get ghosted. How do you switch from that one-off to a more longer-term collaboration with the brand? And you talk about positioning yourself as a consultant. I heard in one of your podcasts, and I was really interested in what does that kind of mean? Can you tell us a little bit more about how do you move from being just a content machine to a consultant for a brand?
Well, let's first talk about, of course, like the dream is for everyone to be able to have a long-term, almost like ambassadorship with a brand where you're not out there constantly trying to find the next partner. It's like you're working with them every month, every quarter, and so on. Again, let's put our hat on. Let's pretend we're the advertiser. It is a nightmare scenario to enter into a 12-month engagement with someone that you've never worked with before. Because what happens if after month one, it's a nightmare? You've probably experienced this, Anna, right? You work with someone and it's just like a nightmare. Like they are not responsive. You have to chase them down for everything. And you're like, oh God, if I had to do a 12-month partnership with this person, it would just be a nightmare, right? And so most brands don't want to commit to doing a long-term engagement until they've had at least some experience working with you. So that's just, let's just level set expectations here. Like it's not reasonable to expect a brand, if they've never worked with you, to do some sort of long-term deal. So my advice is to just blow their socks off on their first engagement, over deliver, show them what it would look like, how awesome it would be, how easy you make their life if they were to hire you. So that's point number one. And then point number two is having a low enough ego to be able to approach them after the campaign and say, hey, how did it go? Most creators do not want to do that. Because why? Because you're terrified that it didn't go well. You're terrified that you didn't drive enough sales, that you didn't drive enough leads or signups to the brand's webinar or enough ticket sales to their in-person conference, right? And so Nelson Mandela has this, one of my favorite quotes is like, I never lose. I either win or I learn. So on one hand, the brand could say, hey, it went great. Thanks for asking. Great. I'm sure you would have no hesitation pitching them on an ongoing partnership, right? But if they say, well, it just went kind of okay, or it didn't go so well. Great. Now it's time to be low ego about it. Say, thank you so much for sharing that. I have some ideas about why I think that is. Again, leaning into the consultant thing that you're mentioning. I've put together what I call a post-campaign report, something I talk about in my book, where I'm not just analyzing the quantitative performance of this campaign, of like how many people liked it and shared it on LinkedIn and commented and all that, but the qualitative stuff. I got a bunch of DMs from people where they were asking questions about your tool, and I screenshotted those. And here, look, we had 5 people who actually shared some legitimate grievances with the product. Oh, I tried it a year ago and it didn't work. Or, oh, it's too expensive. Or, oh, I'm using the competitor's tool. Don't you think that brand would love to see that data? Because then you could come to them and say, hey, it seems like there's an opportunity to re-educate the market. It seems like people are thinking one thing about your tool that's not accurate. Let's make that the focus of the next activation. Let's do a whole series on LinkedIn about, why the brand reformulated the product, and it's, the SaaS tool is so much better now, and they've got the AI feature and it's so much easier, right? And so, it's your job to circle not just the positive, glowing comments back to the brand, but the neutral or negative ones. Because now you're serving not just as a creator with a distribution channel, but a consultant with access to market research about their product. So again, those of you who are professionals and marketers and B2B creators should start familiarizing yourself with how can you serve as a consultant to these brands, because now you're no longer just a commodity.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also really interesting. You mentioned data and reports. Something at Favikon we have developed is that reports feature. It's equally as important for creators as well as brands to understand how their campaign went, analyze the key metrics, engagement, that kind of thing. And I think that's why something like Favikon for creators is also really great, to be able to track how well your post performed, and also maybe compare yourself with your competitors and see who's working for other brands and how well did their posts do. So data and metrics is something we are obviously really into here at Favikon. That's basically our whole mantra. But at the same time, sorry, I want to go.
I just want to quickly mention, you are being judged by your clients on this, right? So if a creator comes to you and says, hey, Anna, here's a bunch of data that you can send back to your client, you look awesome, right? You look fantastic, right? And so that, again, it's this whole idea of like, how can you make Anna look good? Everyone listening here, how can you make Anna and Cade look amazing to their clients? Because then you're going to want to hire them again, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think understanding your data and how well you are performing is a huge part of being a creator now, and tools like Favikon obviously really help to do that. So really important that we talked about data today as well, and obviously that's what we're all about. And it kind of leads me into my kind of next part anyway, which I did want to talk about, the point you raised earlier about looking beyond follower count. And something I think you said that I find really reassuring for creators. We love data, but you say that your worth as a creator is not tied to your metrics. And we do at Favikon, we're looking beyond, follower count to that really authentic engagement, credibility, and real influence that matters. So if it's not followers that that brands are really interested in anymore, I wondered if you had ideas about what are brands actually look for when they evaluate a creator right now, and what should creators really be tracking and optimizing?
So one question I get a lot when I talk about the rope method is, the P in the rope method is proof. And a lot of people says, well, if I don't have a lot of proof of working with past partners, like what could I share that would illustrate that I, am credible? And I'm imagining quite a few of you on here, in addition to creating your content, you also might sell things, right? Coaching, courses, you have a book, you speak, so you do other things beyond just the content stuff. And so brands are always looking for, like, how can I illustrate that how can I detect whether or not this person actually has influence? So what's a great example of that is how many people signed up for this webinar that we're doing right now, right? That's data, right? If I email my list, I make a post on LinkedIn, how many people frickin' register for this webinar, right? Like that shows that you have influence. And so it doesn't just have to be about direct sales or conversions that you've helped with this other brand. It's like, hey, no, like when I tell people to do a thing, they do the thing, right? And so, so if you're listening or watching this, think about in your own universe, in your own industry, what are the things that you could show to a brand to say, like, look, I'm actually influential. Yes, I haven't done a ton of partnerships, but like people really care about the things that I say. And so yes, things like that, things like engagement care a lot. The other thing too is that, I don't know if you're seeing this too, Anna, but like, there's a big, I think, subsection of the human population that is like increasingly becoming anti-AI. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know, I constantly am getting AI comments under my LinkedIn posts, and it frustrates the heck out of me, right? And so I'm sure some of you are experiencing this as well. And so it's like, if you actively curate a community of real humans and you can show that to a brand, that's a valuable thing, because brands are scared of hiring someone and then ultimately finding out later that actually that person is fraudulently purchasing engagement, because that's a thing too, right? Is people will go out there and like, get 20, 30 people to comment on their LinkedIn post or whatever, but it's actually they're bots or they're actually not real people. And so these are the things that brands are thinking about, is like, how can I trust that if I'm hiring someone, that the people in their audience are actually legitimate? And so how can you showcase that to a brand in advance?
Yeah, definitely. That is something that we care a lot about at Favikon, and we developed the authenticity score for LinkedIn and X that is really about catching that kind of fake engagement, the bots on your comment section. And the authenticity score really is like the pillar of Favikon, and it's something I think creators really should be paying attention to. I mean, I see AI comments all the time as well under people's posts, and I feel like it just drags down the value of, like, unfortunately, that creator's post or of the feed in general. We're seeing AI all over the place. So for us as well, that's why I think for creators and for our partners, we always, talk about not using AI where possible. I mean, we know it's a part of life, but really trying to keep that human aspect, I think, is the most important thing. And that also, makes you credible as a creator, and brands are going to want to work with you time and time again. So I'm glad that you brought up that point, actually, because authenticity and kind of not using AI where possible is really what we're all about. I think we're at kind of 45 minutes. I wonder if we could maybe do a little quick fire just to kind of recap everything we talked about.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So kind of in like one word or sentence, if you can give me a response to, I'll do a couple of these just to wrap things up.
Okay.
So what's one thing a creator should never do in a negotiation?
Don't be a pain in the butt.
I love it.
I'm trying to keep these as succinct as possible.
Oh, for sure. I think it's great. And we kind of already talked about, the negotiation phase. So hopefully people that's the main takeaway from that. What's the kind of biggest pricing mistake creators make?
Spitting back one number and not using packages.
Okay. And packages is something I think you develop more in your book. So I think if people are interested in that idea as well and the more about pricing, they should definitely check that out. Okay, cold outreach or content-led inbound? Which one?
Both.
Okay. How many hours a week should a creator realistically spend on outreach?
3 to 4 hours.
Okay. This was an important one I wanted to cover because I think it's also important as a creator that you don't burn yourself out, constantly pitching for opportunities as well. So that's a good one. And I think this is a nice way to wrap up, kind of finish the sentence or sum up in a kind of sentence for you. A creator becomes a sponsor magnet when they... Or what is a sponsor magnet for you?
Someone who has empathy for what the brand is going through.
Yeah, especially in this economy. We know it's hard out here for brands and for creators. So I really appreciate it. I wonder if we have maybe some questions from the chat. Yeah,
let's do it.
Kate and Florencia having a little look through a chat for us. Let's see. Which one? All right, we have one question about the rope method. The organic thing is difficult to replicate to many different brands we would like to contact. 10 videos for 10 different brands. Do you have tips to deepen the O?
If you don't have existing content that showcases that your audience has existing affinity for their brand, make the content before you pitch them.
Okay.
So the content should still serve your followers, clearly. But when you're planning out your content strategy for the next month that I'm going to use this post or I'm going to use this podcast episode or whatever to pitch this brand in 3 weeks. I'm going to get a bunch of great engagement on it. And then I'm going to use that to showcase them. So you have to be more intentional about the content that you're posting now, knowing that you're going to have this strategy. But it's critical. You can't just email a brand and be like, trust me, my brand's going to love you. No, like you can't, they need to see evidence of that they are, potential buyers of that product. I actually recently did an episode on my podcast, named the Sponsor Magnet podcast, about this very thing of like, how do you kind of reverse engineer, this strategy if you don't have a lot of organic content to showcase to the brand that you have credibility.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. Hopefully that answers their question. Do we have something else? How would you approach partnerships as a small podcast with a broader audience, for example, self-development?
I would think very long and hard and seriously about niching your podcast down, not have it be so general and wide. There is 100,000 podcasts about self-development. I'm sorry. I'm gonna. A lot of people call me their tough love mentor, but this is the reality: is there's lots and lots of podcasts that talk about this thing. What is your angle? What is your unique perspective? What is it like? If you were to come to a brand and say, I talk about self-development on my podcast, why would they not go out there and hire the 99,000 other podcasts that talk about that? And so, what is your angle? Is it self-development for people who have, kids, more than 5 kids, and they're trying to do the work-life balance? Or is it self-development for people who are in the healthcare profession? Or is it self-development for, I don't know what it is. There's probably some other angle that you can talk about in your podcast. You're so much more credible, because here's the thing. If you were to approach that brand, oftentimes they're thinking, what other pockets of consumers, types of consumers have we not tried targeting before? And so if you're able to come to them and say, hey, I have a podcast where I speak specifically to neurodivergent people, that is super interesting to them, because it's very difficult for them. Like, you cannot target that really on Meta. There's a lot of things you can't target on Meta now, right? And so if you can show that you are an outlet for them to test marketing to a segment of consumers that they've never marketed to, that is a very interesting thing to them. And so I know your advice was how do you get partnerships for your general podcast, but I'm giving you some content strategy tough love as well, is that it not only will you be able to get more partnerships, but your podcast will probably do better too.
No, for sure. I think the tough love approach is sometimes what we need to hear. And I think, it comes back to that thing you were saying earlier about the more niche, the more kind of like precise you can be with brands as well and in your content, the more brand opportunities are going to come your way. So I think that is really good advice as well. We have one more question. How do you know who to contact when you decide to reach out to a brand?
All right. Well, this is where I'm going to make a shameless plug for my book because on page 69 of the book, I have this chart. Okay, I'm going to hold it up real close. And this chart is called Job Title Targeting Matrix. Okay. And so I break it down by size of company. So this is really important. So if it's a smaller company, let's say 1 to 15 employees, there's probably only one person that works in marketing. It's the head of marketing, the director of marketing, the marketing manager. There's probably not there. And that person's doing everything, right? They're doing the Google pay-per-click ads. They're doing the meta ads. And yeah, if they're doing partnerships, they're probably handling that too. But as a company gets larger, they now start introducing layers into that marketing hierarchy. So now you've got marketing managers. Now you've got coordinators. Maybe you've got a VP of marketing, right? And then as you get into the really large organizations, now maybe they've hired an agency, an outside agency to handle their influencer marketing strategy. And so you're thinking about the account executives and the directors and things like that. So that chart will kind of help you orient, like, who are the types of titles that I should be targeting based on the size of the organization?
Yeah, for sure. And we obviously go and check out the book for more information. Get the whole rundown on that. I just think maybe we have one more minute for another question that's come through again from Hussam. Would you recommend targeting small brands first to build the proof for bigger brands and use this instead of the normal content to build the credibility?
I mean, I am a huge fan of targeting smaller and medium-sized brands because oftentimes they need the most help. They don't have 20 people on their marketing team. They have 1 or 2. And so if you can come to them and say, hey, here is literally a turnkey solution for you. I will create content for you, for your company LinkedIn page, or for your newsletter. I noticed that you don't have a newsletter, or I noticed that you're not posting on the company page. Let me create that content for you. $7,500 a month, right? Here's what I'll do for you. All you got to do is say yes. Oftentimes, like, that is a very attractive opportunity to the right brand because, again, they don't have the bandwidth to do it themselves. And so, yeah, I'm a huge fan of trying to work with some of those smaller to medium-sized brands because you could serve, again, going back, I am a consultant. I'm not just a creator. I can help them accomplish these much more ambitious things, objectives for their company.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess sometimes as well, if your values align with the smaller brand as well, it's a good way to get your foot in the door and also just, be that consultant for the brand, build a relationship so that you make those kind of longer term deals as well. All right, I think we can leave it there. I think we've covered all the questions more or less. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin. This honestly was such a pleasure to talk with you today. And I think all of us at Favikon and also our audience today joining us live have learned so much from you. And hopefully we'll carry all your amazing advice into the future for their future brand partnerships and pitching, attracting, and locking down those deals in the future. Tell us a little bit maybe where we can find you and maybe some of the projects you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thanks again for having me. This was such a blast. Selfishly, I love speaking specifically to B2B professionals and creators because I don't think y'all quite understand the amount of opportunities that are available to you. I mean, maybe you do because you're in the Favikon universe, but honestly, like, you guys are sitting on the precipice of a huge opportunity. And so I really implore you to take this stuff seriously. So I would love if you want to check out the book, you can just go to sponsormagnet.com. You can grab it there, but just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, I would love to hear from you. However I can be of service to you. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm working on. I've got an in-person event. I've got a podcast. I've got this, I've got a lot of things I'm doing. So you can probably tumble down the rabbit hole if you want to learn more. But shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. Would love to chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Justin. And from our side at Favikon, do feel free to follow along, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the bell so that you don't miss another live stream like this one. And you can follow along with other influencer marketing updates, features, and also creator economy news. As we say, we're sitting on the B2B creator economy is just starting to grow. So super excited to see where partners and where audience go with the advice today. So thank you so much, Justin, and thank you everyone for joining.
This is great. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. See you, Anna.
Thank you. Bye-bye.